There's this great story about Marcus Aurelius. He's a slave, as you know. He has an owner, so one day the owner is getting really upset with him, or he just, an angry guy. So he grabs his arm and keeps twisting his arm. And you know what happens when someone, grabs your arm and twists it? You begin to experience pain. Epictetus kind of looks at the owner and says, if you twist it a bit more, it's going to break. And then I can't wash your dishes. If that's okay for you, go on twisting it more. Okay? And what he's basically saying is this. You have my arm. As a human being, I want autonomy. I want freedom. I want to possess my own physical body. But I know I am not my physical body. You want to hold on to it, fine. And as the twists begin to take place, you experience pain. Now, none of us in this class can do well with pain. Consider the movie Rambo. How he is captured, how he is tortured, how he screams. And yet he doesn't lose hope. He is not his body. He can endure all the physical pain. There has to be something inside you that says, I am experiencing pain, but I am not pain. It's an amazing place to be in life. Where someone says to Socrates, when you are dead, where should we bury you? And he says, well, if you can find Socrates, bury him wherever you want. That there is the body of Socrates, and then there is the spirit of Socrates. These are two different things. And think, 2,500 years have passed, and we talk not about the corpse of Socrates, but the spirit of Socrates. 2,000 years have passed. We don't talk about the body of Jesus. We talk about the spirit of Jesus, or Muhammad, or Moses, or the Buddha. Okay? If for those of you in this class who have seen that movie, Encanto, it's not Encanto, sorry. This is other one. Is it Encanto? No, it's not Encanto. It's... Don't you guys watch movies? It's an animation that just came out. It's about this young kid who wants to be a singer, but the grandparents or the parent or the grandmother or the sister. What is it?
Disney movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the name of it.
Oh, it's a Disney movie?
Coco.
Yeah, Coco. Is it Coco or El Coco?
It's Coco.
It's what?
Coco.
Coco? Like a drink?
Yeah.
Coco. So if you've seen the movie Coco, one of the most interesting things about the movie is, it's a very, very ancient concept, which is the following. When you forget someone, their soul begins to disappear from paradise or from hell. I suppose if someone is in hell and is miserable, it's best to forget them. But if someone is in paradise, man, okay? If you want someone to continue to survive, keep remembering them. And that's, these are the immortals. These are the Gilgameshes and the Buddhas and the Socrates, right? So for those of you in this class who really, really enjoy the presence of your parents or your grandparents, when they pass away, keep their pictures. Keep looking at them, okay? Because it reminds you of something. They become symbolic. Now, one of the problems with being able to connect everything to everything is you create so many exits, so many branches that you forget where you were. Anyways, so going back, if I can kind of catch myself without getting lost. When you experience pain, you kind of forget that you are something more than your physical body, something more than your historical body, okay? Where your intellect comes in and says, no, you're none of that stuff. You go home, something is wrong in your life, you worry. How could you be a good Stoic? You can't. It's impossible. especially in modern times. You know. Let me kind of respond to your question in a slightly different way, and then we'll move on to somebody else's maybe question. Stoicism is about transformation. It's about turning iron into gold. Change is always difficult, nearly impossible. You know, there is this piece by Seneca, I think it's called On the Shortness of Life, where he argues that many of us complain that life is too short. And he says the truth is life is way, way, way too damn long. I mean, look at you, man. When you were 2, you screamed for ice cream. Now you scream for a degree. In a few years, you'll scream for marriage. A few years after that, you'll scream for a house. A few years after that, you'll scream for children. A few years after that, you'll scream for private schools. All of life is about screaming. The screaming doesn't change. You'll always scream. And if all of life is about screaming, well, why not find something simple where you don't have to scream too much about it? And when you say that to yourself, you say, well, maybe there isn't much out there to look forward to. Desire is desire. And as you get older, your desires just become more complex. And then your screaming becomes louder. And near the end, you realize it's all been a waste. Why scream? If you don't want to scream, don't have desires. If you want to have desires, make sure you have simple desires. If you have simple desires, make sure you're content. And that takes a lot of insight and experience. It's doable, but you need to be in a cult. I'm serious. You can't otherwise. And what are you going to do after class? You're going to go to your friends. You're going to go to your work. You have to please people. And that's how life is for the next 60, 70 years. But for those of you in this class who are young, my recommendation is start reflecting when you're very, very young. It'll save you so much headache when you get older. Don't play the role of a messiah. If you're in a relationship and it's not going well, walk away. You're not going to change them. Jesus couldn't change anyone. You certainly can't. Okay, let's move on. All right, Toby, are you sure?
I think I have some ideas to work with. Makes sense.
Do you know which cult you should sign up for? Are there any around this area?
I think I'll have to do some more reflecting before I
Yes.
see which cults.
Does your dad belong to a cult?
Not that I know. Does yoga.
He does yoga? He's a man. Well, tell him I said hi. Anyone else? David, anything? No? You sure? Matthew? Sitlali? Sarah? Paula?
When you were talking, I thought about something. A while ago, I was into reading books, self-help books.
You were what?
I was into reading self-help.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
So I read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective and in that book, I forget the name of the person that he used, but it was during the Holocaust. It was somebody who became prisoner of the Nazis, and they tortured him every day. And
Okay.
they asked him how he survived, and I guess now that you're talking about Stoicism, I guess that's what he practiced, or that's how he was able to live through what he was put through, because he was able to separate the body from the soul,
Okay.
right? When you were talking, it just reminded me of that portion of the book.
Well, the problem with pain, especially in that particular environment, or any environment really, is this: if you're aware, you're dealing with two things. You're dealing with your instincts, which is as an animal, you will do whatever you can to survive, and it happens unconsciously. It's like you're on autopilot. You're no longer in the driver's seat. Something about you says, Paula. It doesn't really. I don't really know how it works, but you just kind of know you're gonna kind of stick around for a while. Then there is this other area, which is pain makes you very aware of how miserable your life is. So you're dealing with two forces. One force you're unaware, which is your instinctual aspect, which is unconsciously you know that you're going to survive and you will do whatever you can to survive. Okay, life eats life. Okay, there was this great movie that came out some years ago, and since I'm really bad with the titles, I'm not going to try giving you this one because I don't know what it is. It's with Tobey Maguire and that other guy, whose name I forget. So, his name is, I don't know what his name is. Anyways, so Maguire is in the military, he's caught. Brothers, maybe, yeah. His brother is caught, and they say to him that if you want to go free, you have to kill your companion. And here's a stick, or iron rod. And first he says no, and then the picture of his wife and his kids are shown to him, and he picks up this piece of metal and beats the crap out of this guy, and his skull is open and he's dead. And while, of course, I'm watching this, I'm saying, you're Spider-Man. Come on, where are your webs? So what you have then are these two forces inside you. There is pain. You hate your husband. You hate your job. You hate the customer who's abusing you in this way. Okay? And that has its own sort of complexities. You have this imagination. I'm going to figure out where they live. I'm going to go and, flatten their car. Do this, do that. You get kind of consumed in that particular imagination. And then there is other part of you that says, you can do all the stuff, you'll never get caught. Life will go on. Okay? So there's a good amount of conflict that takes place. You're tortured, you wish for death, at the same time, you don't want to die. And then something happens when you're free. And then you kind of write a book about, when I was being tortured, I was able to separate myself from my body. I think if you want to be useful to people, if you want to write your story, and then market that story to people, I think you should be reflective enough, honest enough, and scientific enough to kind of sit down and say, okay, what sort of emotions did I go through? Imagine if you're addicted to video games, and you're seeing like your 12-year-old nephew being addicted to video games, or slowly becoming very addicted to video games. If you want to be heard, listen to, okay? Not only you need to speak the language of a 12-year-old, but you need to, first of all, have understood what it takes for you to have become addicted, and the struggles you go through as an addict, and the moments of liberation you long for as an addict, and the relapses you go through as an addict, and the back and forth, and the hatred, the rage, the disgust, the frustration, your self-image, the negativity that lives inside you. Because if you just come out and say, yeah, I was in my body, you know, all these poor people out there who are going through issues, you make them think that it's like taking aspirin. You know, you take 2, you swallow it with some water, and 10 minutes later it's finished. And the truth is, it doesn't work that way. You know, and these self-help books, I think they damage people even more. Because you give them the illusion that things can be fixed in a month, when in fact it takes like a couple of decades. So, do not read self-help books. But I am sure they have, you know, their pluses. Luke, anything?
Can you talk more about like life coaches and therapy? What are your thoughts on therapy?
Let's say I am your father. And I don't want to make this personal because I don't really know you, but I think questions are interesting. Maybe you're asking because you have a friend or whatever the case may be. But to be able to answer or respond to these questions relatively intelligently, I like to kind of just put you and myself in a scenario. Will that be okay? All right. So there is you and there is me. I am your father and you are my son. Okay? And this is the 21st century. I am at work from 9 to 5. Okay? I don't really have very much time to spend with you. So when I come home, even though you're right there, I'm kind of struggling to bring some resources into my life to show you that I have some energy so you and I can hang out, so you can become visible. So I can at least, when I come home for the next few hours, put myself back in shape so I could be present for you. Most fathers don't have that capacity. I mean, most people are not that self-aware. Okay, they come home, they're exhausted. If you happen to be an American, you go to the fridge, you grab a beer, you sit, you watch TV. So this kid who's been alone, you, my son, who's been alone, or you're going through stuff, you want to come and talk to me, but I'm not there and you're not there, okay? The problem is this. You have been going through certain issues, and I have not been able to see those issues. And you've tried to kind of communicate them to me in subtle ways. Dad, can I borrow some money? And it's not because you want to go anywhere. You want to kind of start a dialogue, okay? Can we go to Target? Whatever the case may be. You know, I'm doing poorly on math. You're a genius. Can you help me? Okay. But I have ears, but my ears don't hear. I have eyes, but my eyes don't see. Okay? So what happens, you have a tiny little issue here. Okay? And if they are tiny, I'm not going to see too much. And even if I see, if I'm exhausted, I'm going to look the other way. Okay? I mean, look, Logan, this is not about you. A few minutes ago, as I was talking, he was like playing with his phone. Okay? He doesn't do that very often, but look, it takes time for me to stop in the middle of my talk. Okay? Look at him and say, Logan, can you please put your phone away? That takes time. That takes energy. That's disruptive and distracting. And because I know he doesn't do that very often, I just let it go. Okay? Now, I'm going to let this go. And I'm going to assume that you have the intelligence, the intellectual power to put your life back in order. And how old are you here? Let's say you are 9. Okay? Now, once in a while, I say, Luke, you're so quiet, man. Come on. What I don't know, I'm not aware, is that you're being consumed by this tiny little dot called pain. Whatever shape or form it may take. And then, you know, I've put 8 hours at my job, I come home, I can't really keep pushing. What's the problem? What's going on? There comes a point and say, okay, son, You come out whenever you want. And when you are ready to come out, I'm like snoring. Okay? This goes on, and now you're 11. And now this was a dot, now it's this. And once in a while, I see certain expressions from you that I just don't like. The problem is, listen, my life is tough, man. Rent, food, the fact that I hate my job, the fact that I'm getting older, the fact that I'm just not happy. I mean, those are the things we deal with on a daily basis. And you are my son. Remember, the closest people to us are the most invisible. Do you see? Now, when I see you misbehaving, there's going to be a great chance, because you and I really never had or engaged in healthy dialogues, I'm just going to snap at you. Okay. And you're going to kind of be passive, hopefully. You're not going to get into a shouting match with me. And you're going to say to yourself, if you had listened to me when I was 9, this wouldn't be the case. Now you have this issue. You also have a father on your hand who's a jerk. Okay? Now you happen to be 19. And this, see, this is Luke, and this is the dot that was outside. Okay? It impacted you once in a while. This is the Luke, and this was out here still. It impacted 40% of you. But now, this is the problem, and Luke is right in the middle. So if someone asks, who is Luke? You say, a crappy human being. Or a person in pain. Okay. Pain defines you. When you get to this stage, I, as your father, remember, if you ever want to be aware of anything, the first thing that needs to happen is pain. Without pain, you will never become aware. Okay? My teeth are bad. My brother-in-law is a dentist, but I am lazy. I don't want to drive 3 hours to Elk Grove to get my mouth fixed. And I say to myself, if there is an hour pain and 23 hours of comfort, there is no need to visit the dentist. If on the other hand there is 10 hours of pain, I will cancel class and drive to Elk Grove. Okay? So remember, pain inspires you to wake up. Okay? As your father, I come home, and I now, because of pain, I see more of you. Okay? If you were invisible in the past because you were relatively self-contained, now you're immensely disruptive. Your room is a mess. Okay? You are rebellious. You talk back. You use profanities. You just sit on the sofa and you smoke weed in front of your father, me. Okay? You cuss. And these are troubling things for me. And then I sit with your mom and I say, I can't do much about this. And rightly so. No one can do anything about this. This is like a volcano erupting. Okay. Now we say, let's do therapy. So before we even go to what involves in therapy, you need to understand, almost everything in life begins with a tiny thing. Okay? And now I'm leaving aside the big stuff or abuses that take place early on in life. Okay? I'm just talking about things that snowball in time and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. There comes a point where I look at you, I've tried many times, okay? This is really my fault. As a father, I should have paid attention, but no fathers can because everybody's busy with their own garbage, okay? It's a little too late. Now I sit your mother and say, okay, we don't have much money, but we need to find a therapist. The thing you need to understand now is this. This began at the age of 9. It has continued for about 10 years. That's a 10-year relationship you have had with an issue. Okay? Now this, at first, you just slept with this pain for one night. At the age of 11, you were sleeping with this pain about 2 hours a day. At the age of 19 now, you're sleeping with this about 20 hours a day. What you have is a history. History has a narrative. Remember how narratives are created. Whenever you sit, when you go to Barnes and Nobles to buy a book, a novel, okay, it has an introduction. It's like your father saying, son, if you start smoking weed right now, by the time you're 25, you'll do cocaine. All right? That's the introduction. Then you have chapters. Okay? And it's about 300 pages. And then you get to the epilogue. So what you have is a huge story that puts all the characters in the right place. What you have is a story here. How do you deal with the story? Now remember, when you have stories, Luke, what you have in them are emotions. And then what you have inside these emotions, tiny parts of you called the intellect, comes in to figure out what the hell is going on in all these emotions. And remember, the intellect and the emotions, when they come together, they want to figure out why you feel a certain way, but also why you act in a certain way. Because if you're emotionally in a bad place and your sister comes to you, your dad comes to you and asks you something, you're going to scream. Now you have two things. Now you have the emotions that belong to you that you feel bad about, and now you have the screaming to your father that makes you feel ashamed and guilty. Now you have two things to deal with. You have to kind of beg your father's forgiveness. And as he didn't listen to you, over there, you realize now, you want to listen to him, but you can't. He wants to listen to you, but he can't. Now that you have these emotional, intellectual issues, you find yourself in pain. Pain always creates for loneliness, always. You're always going to be alone. The problem with aloneness, if you're in it for too much, you have a house, that's you, but the door to this house will forever remain locked. Because if you open your door and allow another person in, they're going to see what's inside. And because you already know that you are crappy, you don't want people to figure out that you're crappy as well. So you put a very nice show on them. You will never open the door. You will lose the ability to be intimate. So before you go to therapy, or any one of us go to therapy, these are things that you need to know. That sure, you may go to someone who's really, really good at what they do. Okay? But this has taken about 10 years to be written. Okay? There is another thing that you need to understand. You have your therapist, my therapist, giving me some facts about why things are the way they are. Okay? So first, these are the garbage that live inside me. Okay? Then is the remedy. If you want to fix yourself, and remember, figuring out these facts, if it has taken 10 years for these to be created, you have to go to your therapist for at least 5 years so that you could feel comfortable with them, trust them, have faith in them, and then you open the door. And not all the way. You just show cracks, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the windows, okay? And then you remove the roof, and then you remove the walls, and now your therapist can see everything about you. And it's going to be frightening. Because for the first time, because what we do is we also repress. We don't want to see anything, man. Okay? I don't want to acknowledge the fact that I'm a crappy human being. I'm a bad instructor. I don't want to see those things. They're painful. So the first thing that's going to happen, you're going to find your therapist being your enemy. As they reveal things to you, you say, wait a minute, I'm not ready for that. You push back. And as you stick out with them more often, okay, you begin to open. Then you have to deal with the emotions. Then they give you facts, and at this point, you enjoy self-knowledge. The more you know about yourself, the better you can have control of your own destiny, okay? But that's going to take a while. Then they're going to give you some remedies. What you need to do. You have fact. You have the medicine. The most difficult part is the application. How do you bring that which is a concept to something that's real? And that goes back to his question about Stoicism. And if you or I want to go to therapy, you're going to be shown emotions you won't like and you're going to go nuts. You have to be a Stoic. You sit there, you look at them. You look at them as a scientist. Okay? Go on YouTube and watch people just dissect live animals. And that's how you got to do. Every single one of your emotions is like a rat. And you have to kind of summon up the courage to dissect it in half, watch it, fight for life, and then look at the guts. There is more to say, but we'll continue on Thursday, if that's okay. Listen, for those of you who are interested in kind of philosophy the way it's been presented to you in the past few weeks, I have these great audios. They're not by me. Audio books, you know, if you give me a flash drive, I'll give you about 1,000 hours of, at least I think they're great things to listen to as you walk, walk or fly. Yeah.
Are they the same ones like that we're talking about Marx?
I can give you those as well. I'll give you whatever I have. Just give me a flash drive that's at least 16 gigs or more. You may not like them, but my recommendation is, even if you don't like them, put them on the shelf somewhere. When you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 100, when you're deaf and blind, you listen to them.